Your road to success was definitely with a lot of obstacles in the way. Do you want to give us a little bit of background on your history and starting these $1 million company?
Yes, absolutely. So it's a pretty jagged road to say the least, but I'm not one to take a victim stance. I'm just sharing with you what the course involved and
Right. If you don't, like you said, a lot of people say if you don't try, you're not going to fail. I mean, you don't, you're going to fail sometimes, but if you don't try, you're not going to get to that one door that's going to open.
that's right. And I don't use the word failure very often. I mean, I don't believe that failure ever even occurs until.
Or your tipping point when you were like, okay, this is the time I need to make a change, or was it gradual?
Well, yeah, it was. I was always, even as a young person, I was always pretty charming, I guess you could say, and I was always able to talk myself out of stuff, no matter what it was. I had a silver tongue, but
That's amazing. And now you didn't have the college degree, the connections were not there, so you literally had to start from scratch and try to just work your way up.
probably even below scratch because
And now you also have something which is called CommitCon that's coming up. When's the first one going to be?
well, thanks for asking about that. CommitCon is a business conference, and but it's not one like anyone has ever seen, in my opinion. Most business conferences, and I've been to.
Hi, I'm Melissa Bill. Welcome to Gold Media. Today joining me is Scott Allen Curley. He's a best-selling author, CEO, and entrepreneur. Thank you for joining us today.
And thank you so much for having me, Melissa.
So your journey is definitely one that has a lot of twists and turns. Right now, you're the co-founder and CEO of Finish Line Tax Solutions. You started that with only $2,000 and grew that to like a multi-million-dollar company, which is a feat in itself. But now your road to success was definitely with a lot of obstacles in the way. Do you want to give us a little bit of background on your history and kind of like what came before starting these $1 million company?
Yes, absolutely. So it's a pretty jagged road to say the least, but I'm not one to take a victim stance. So as I share this with you, I'm not saying it from a victim's perspective. I'm just sharing with you what the course involved and how I was able to navigate it. But when I was adopted and just right out the gates, I had some challenges with identity issues and my parents, although they were wonderful and amazing people, they struggled with their own set of challenges. My mother was an alcoholic, and so we had addiction issues in our family. And my father, um, not to not to say anything bad about him, but he struggled with fidelity issues with my mom and all that because I was the only child. I kind of caught the brunt of a lot of their anger because when one would leave, I was the only one left. But nevertheless, um, just growing up in a space where I just wasn't really sure who I was, I sort of imploded after high school and started doing a lot of drugs and going back and forth to jail for petty crimes, nothing violent, nothing sexual, but still, it all added up. And in Texas, which is where I live, we're pretty, it's the no, it's the three strike rule goes into effect. So by the time I was 22 years old, I'd already been to prison 3 times and for nonviolent offenses, and ended up, making a long story short, spending 10 years in prison for those type of crimes. I got out in 95 without any direction. I did, while I was there though, I did just make a decision. I made a decision that even though I'm in it, I just choose no longer to be of it. I couldn't change the past, but I could control what my future looked like. And so because of that, I just started taking steps and trying to prepare myself to move forward from a responsible way. But also I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I knew I did. I've always been an entrepreneur. And but when you have 9 felonies under your belt for non-violent offenses and no real job experience and no formal education other than what I got in prison and educating myself, it did create a set of challenges, but I use them as opportunities. And I just believe in the law of numbers. 100% of obstacles will not, I'm sorry, 100% of opportunities will not be denied you 100% of the time. 100% of doors will not be closed 100% of the time. That's just mathematically impossible. So I just honed in on that belief and kept plugging away, and doors gradually began to open. And that's kind of how it all started.
Right. And if you don't, like you said, a lot of people say if you don't try, you're not going to fail. I mean, if you don't fit, you're going to fail sometimes, but if you don't try, you're not going to get to that one door that's going to open.
That's right. And I don't use the word failure very often. I mean, I don't believe that failure ever even occurs until you stop trying. I believe that we may hit shortcomings along the way every day, all day, but those shortcomings are not necessarily failures. They're simply learning opportunities, because each time any of us hits a shortcoming and we don't quit, then what we've simply done is just we've learned some things. We've taught ourselves what not to do. We built up a little bit of resilience, a little bit more. We built up a little bit more confidence, because now with the education comes confidence. So I use that as a stepping stone to help me continue to move forward. I don't consider those failures. They're just learning opportunities.
Right. Oh, definitely. And now what if you had to say what would be like your moment or your tipping point when you were like, okay, this is the time I need to make a change, or I need to make, or was it gradual? Was there like one moment in your mind?
Well, yeah, it was. I was I was always, even as a young person, I was always pretty charming, I guess you could say, and I was always able to talk myself out of stuff, no matter what it was. I had a silver tongue. But when I went to jail that in 1991, and I got sentenced to 35 years to the Texas Department of Institutional Division, which is the prison system, that judge said these words to me. He said, "Scott Curley, I hereby sentence you to 35 years, Texas Department of Criminal Justice Institutional Division. Do you have any questions?" And when he said that at 23 years old, the first thing I did is I looked at my lawyer and said, "Did he really just say 35 years?" My lawyer just put his head down. But I said all that to say that that was that moment. That was the moment that I realized that there's no more playing games with society and with my life. This is real. Either I'm going to choose to let this be my life, or I'm going to start taking steps today to make some changes so that my past does not reflect what my future will be. And that's when that happened.
Yeah, that's some definite, like a lot of people, yeah, if you were in that situation, your life is literally flashing before your eyes because you're like, oh my gosh, like that's almost like pretty much your entire young.
Yeah, 35 years when you're 22, I didn't see daylight in my in my rational way of thinking, but in my heart and gut, I just knew some kind of way I would get through this, and I would get out of it, and I would be better after it was all said and done. So I held on to that.
That's amazing. So with fast forward, so what was the first company that you set out to start?
A few. So, like I said, even as a kid, I always had an entrepreneurial mind. Even in grade school, I would get candy from the little corner store, and I would sell it for twice what I bought it for, and I wouldn't eat much of it. I'd eat just a little bit of it, but I wanted to make my little profit. So I did that, and then I would cut grass on the side. So I've always had that entrepreneurial and that hustler mentality. And when I got out of prison, I didn't jump directly into entrepreneurship. I just wanted to try to find a space and a place to begin building a professional life. And it was challenging because obviously, first thing anyone asks is, do you have a criminal background? And you have to explain that. And even though there were so many people or companies that I interviewed with that really wanted to give me a chance, their policies just would not allow them to. And that's a very pivotal moment for a lot of people, because that is the moment when some people may decide that that's just that I don't deserve a life like this. I'm just going to go back to what I'm used to doing or comfortable doing. But again, I just tapped into my philosophy that 100% of doors will not be closed 100% of the time. I kept plugging. There was finally a guy who was a VP of a company that they had a call center where they sold their services. I won't go into details of what the services and company was, but he, despite their policies, he just saw something in me and he said, you know what, we're gonna bend this rule for you. Just don't let me down. And that was how it all started. And come to find out, I was really had a knack at sales, and which I'm not surprised because when you're out in the streets doing you know dumb stuff like I was doing, you have to be able to have the gift of gab to get what you want in the streets, especially if you're trying to get drugs. So I used that skill set that I had been honing, that I didn't even realize I was honing, I applied it to the business world, and it really worked well. I worked well. I was the top guy in sales, and that's when I first realized um, that I may have found something that I'm good at professionally that could take me somewhere.
That's amazing. And now you didn't have the college degree, the connections were not there. So you literally had to start from scratch and try to just work your way up.
Probably even below scratch, because my playing field I wasn't on a level playing field. And again, I don't say this as a victim. It's the situation I placed myself in, but I had to pull myself up to just the level playing field. Um, but like I said, I actually, believe it or not, I actually enjoyed that process. I love a challenge, and I just absolutely am too daggone stubborn to let anyone say that I can't do something, or just to quit. I'm just not going to do it. So it's just the built-in tenacity. I probably got that from where I was raised, which is, even though it was a challenging upbringing, that was one thing that was definitely taught, to just not quit. That has carried me. Yeah.
Having that perseverance, yeah,
Yeah.
to get
Yeah.
through those hard times.
Hmm.
And now, fast forward to today, what do you have going on? Because you founded a couple companies. You've got what's some things that you have going on right now that I know the book too. So
Yeah. So we started Finish Line. I'll tell you the short story with that. Finish Line, which is my bread and butter company, I should say. I own a few companies. I own a resort, micro resort, and I have a speaking business and some other things. But Finish Line Tax Solutions started out, well, I was in a really tough spot in 2016 when we had $2,000, and I was virtually homeless. I mean, the perfect storm had developed prior to that to create this situation that put me in a space where I was virtually homeless. And a friend of mine, who is now my business partner, he had the bright idea because he knew what kind of tenacity I had. He knew that I had history in selling tax resolution services. He said, "Man, I got $2,000. You think we can start a tax resolutions firm?" And mind you, I'd been offered a job selling timeshares a day before, so I was about to be on the way of pulling myself out of this difficult situation I was in. But I told him, and I remember it like it was yesterday. I said, "Man, if it can be done, yeah, we can do it." So I turned down an actual job while I was virtually homeless to start a company with $2,000, which everyone on the outside looking in said, "You have just absolutely, unequivocally, and completely lost your mind." But in my mind, it made perfect sense. It made no sense to pass up this opportunity to start a business, and we did. And that first year, we turned that $2,000 into about $1 million in sales, with no investors, no one else, just hustling and just grinding it out. And fast forward 9 years later, we've earned a spot on Inc. 5000's fastest growing companies list 2 years in a row. We were mentioned in Forbes magazine, USA Today, Dallas Morning News, several, and we're the largest in Texas that does this from a $2,000 investment. And, not to be long-winded, but I will say that the lesson that goes with that I even learned myself was that it doesn't have to all be figured out. That's what I want other aspiring entrepreneurs and people who just have an idea to keep that in mind. You don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to do it textbook way. You just don't. The most important thing to do is to simply take action and be able and willing to embrace the mistakes, because they're coming. But just because you make a mistake and you stub your toe does not mean that you're on the road to failure. It just means that you're on the right track, because that's what happens on the road to and the pathway to success. But it also builds that strength and that momentum and that discipline. And so there's so many positives that come with making those mistakes.
and now you also have something which is called Commit Con that's coming up. I mean, that's something that just now when it that's not is when's the first one going to be?
Well, thanks for asking about that. CommitCon is a business conference, and but it's not one like anyone has ever seen, in my opinion. Most business conferences, and I've been to dozens, they you go and they're fun. You network, you listen to great speeches, you listen, yeah, and you go away with a warm fuzzy feeling, and that's all good. CommitCon is different in the sense that we're not there. We don't care about the suit and tie, even though you can wear one, of course. But it's not really um, uh, it's not there to focus on what makes you feel good. It's there to focus on what makes you better. Um, it's the purpose of the conference is to put away all the fluff. Let's and to start learning strategies and techniques that they don't teach in business school, that they're not going to teach you in college, that I learned from the trenches, that I learned not just from the trenches of business, but in trenches of the streets, literally, out doing those things and learning how to survive and learning how to see obstacles and view them as opportunities. And so that's the whole point. And lastly, to bring people to the table who may not have felt that they had a seat at the table, who have maybe struggled or have a business idea, but they don't have any money. I had $2,000 and I built a $50 million business, and there's nothing special about me. I'm not Superman, but if I can do it with being homeless and on drugs and only having $2,000, then anybody can. So the whole purpose of the conference is to show and share those techniques and tools and strategies that I use, and bring other people that have done so similar and share that with anybody who has those dreams and wanted to bring them to life and didn't think that they could.
That's amazing. And open those doors, to their mind, to knowing that it's possible.
Yeah, it's not only possible, it's probable. And yeah, it just comes down to taking action and having a certain mindset.
And you also have a book. It's called Absolution: The Dark Path to Light.
Yeah.
And now, did that just was that just released, or?
It was released last year. I'm so uh, honored and blessed that it's doing very well. And again, I'm not technically an author. I don't have any plans to write any other books, but I was short story of that is I was asked so many times, Scott, you need to write a book. With the way your life has gone and the craziness and prison on drugs, homelessness, all that, and where you're at now, you need to write a book. And I never would, and never wanted to until I had a friend that said to me one day that we were just over lunch. He says, Scott, you sure are selfish. Out of the blue. I'm like, hey, what do you mean I'm selfish? I'm not selfish. He said, you have all these experiences. You've been through all this. You put yourself through all this, and look at where you sit now, and you refuse to share that with other people, to show other people how they can do it too. And when he put it in that perspective, it really resonated with me. I didn't want to share it at first because I knew I had opened up so many wounds, and there are so many. But it's not about me. It's about the folks that it could resonate with and help. And so that's the reason that I wrote it, and so apparently it's resonating with some folks, which I'm really appreciative of.
Yeah, and I mean, it talks about just some of the lower points in your life, but also how you just had that transformation and those things, those wonderful things that happened out of it too, as well.
There are, and the thing that is so important now that I hope that anybody who watches this or hears me talking at all understand that I am not special. I am not some Superman. I do not have some outrageously high IQ. I'm just an average guy who refused to quit. That's it. That's it. And I refuse to take a victim stance. Taking a victim stance will cripple all of us, so we all have been victimized at one point or another. We all have, but we choose to be a victim. And I just choose not to be a victim. And I encourage everyone, no matter what has happened and what you've been through or what other people have put you through, do not take a victim stance, because that's the first step towards, a mediocrity and even failure. And with that said, here's what I'd like to leave your show with, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
And we all commit. We all say, I'm going to commit to losing weight. I'm going to commit to running a marathon. I'm going to commit. But 100% of us have set goals and did not fulfill them. And the reason that happens, and we've all done it, is because we can't just commit. We have to commit to our commitment. Once we commit to our commitment, then the rest is simply details. It doesn't mean that it's going to be difficult. I mean, it doesn't mean that it's going to be easy. It doesn't mean that you're not going to hit the bumps in the road, that you're going to bloody your fingers and nose a little bit here and there. But those are still just the details. That's all they are. Because once you commit to the commitment, you're 100% guaranteed to succeed. Because, like I told you earlier, 100% of opportunities will not be denied you 100% of the time. It's mathematically impossible. And so as long as you keep moving forward and you truly commit to that commitment, then you will reach that open door because the law of numbers guarantee it.
That's true. Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
And I hope you come and join us again, maybe down the road, and see what's going on with as far as when CommitCon gets going, because it's 2026, right? When is the first one?
The first one's going to be in Plano, Texas. This is right outside of Dallas, DFW area, on
Okay.
January 21st. And we're expecting iHeartMedia is going to be there. We're expecting some other major players to be there. And also, it's going to be over 2,000 people of aspiring, 2,000 aspiring business owners, small businesses, mid-sized businesses, and people who just want to learn. And they're all coming together simply for one thing. It's just to help people who want to get there, to share their knowledge, information, insight, and tools to help them get there. That's the one and only purpose. There's a saying that goes that you cannot keep what you have unless you give it away. And this is my way of giving that away.
That's amazing. Well, thank you again for joining us. And I'd definitely like to have you back again.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Melissa.